if everyone's looking at each other like they've got a virus, isn't this going to take public transit in the opposite direction?
Yeah,
where people are going to want to be either at home or in their own cars? Hi, you're listening to Good is in the Details. I'm your host, Gwendolyn Dolsky, and joining me once again, Konstantin Hatcher.
Hello.
Hey, so we're going to talk more about that quarantine life.
Quarantine life.
Okay.
I mean, technically, we're not quarantined. We're housed at home.
We're abiding by the governor's
directive. Keep your ass inside.
Do you think it'll step up to another level?
Yeah, it's for sure. I mean, all the signs are saying that. We don't know how many people are infected right now. It's going to be a lot more. There's going to be potential. I mean, our health systems are going to get overwhelmed. The question, that's not like in question. The question is how much so, how quickly can the government, now that FEMA's on board and they're allegedly shipping some supplies out, how quickly those supplies can be made, how quickly these repurposed factories start, turning out additional respirator machines.
Yeah.
The masks and the gloves for healthcare workers, so you can protect them, those that are on the front line of this thing, so they're not putting themselves at any more danger than they need to be.
Right.
So, that's what's going to really measure how bad it gets. I mean, it's going to get worse because more people have it than what we know right now. That's for sure. And the way we know that more and more numbers are increasing are the places where they're just doing more testing. So it's not really a matter of they're catching all the cases. It's more a matter of there's not even enough tests to catch all the cases.
Yeah. We're at the point at which we just need to know what we're dealing with. We don't even know.
We don't know yet. But I think what mitigates that is more and more people staying inside and people aren't being ridiculous or irresponsible.
Unless you're a spring breaker in Florida.
Yeah, and they are all idiots. They're literally carrying death back to their loved ones.
They're all idiots. Okay.
I mean, I'm not mad at them, right? Young people are always, that feeling of invincibility.
Well, it was also a messaging issue because their understanding was it's only negatively impacting seniors.
Right.
So their idea was it wasn't going to harm them, or maybe it would just be a little bit like being sick.
Right.
Okay, we're going to be talking about public transit.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, we have to call the transit whisperer.
The transit whisperer.
Rudy Salo. All right, here we go. Let's see what his thoughts are.
Bring on the transit sage.
Rudy.
Hello, how are you? How are you doing?
Rudy!
Hey, okay.
Hey,
yeah.
Konstantin.
There we go. All right. So, Rudy, first of all, our last recording was on March 4th, and you had made the comment, we have it in the last podcast with Brendan Small, that you had not been taking public transit for 3 weeks. So,
correct.
How did you know that this was going to be, at that time, it wasn't nearly the thing that it is now?
Very simple answer. Do you recall during our virus podcast with Adalia, and we discussed the fact that there had recently been an earthquake, and my wife, as a result, started to prepare our house with a lot of disaster goods.
That's right. You have a lot of peanut butter.
With a lot of peanut butter, right. That's very important, which is I'm so happy about. Peanut butter, fire blankets, and fire extinguishers.
Priorities.
Well, yeah, I mean, man's got to eat, and so does his family. And peanut butter is a good source of protein.
Boom.
So my wife, the surgeon, I think, amateur doomsday prepper, started to really get scared about the coronavirus in the middle of February. And it's because she's a medical doctor. It's because she's aware of impending doom. It's just the part of who she is. And she started to prepare for it. She went to Costco. She prepared very, very well. So we're in good shape. We're not hoarders in any way, shape, or form. We bought slowly over time. And it was at that time where she basically instilled in me that, hey, you gotta. It's so funny. She just walked over to me and said, I've been preparing since January. Okay, that's fine. So in any event, she told me in the middle of February, you need to stop using public transportation. And I listened. And I haven't really been using public transportation since the middle of February.
That's what it dawned on me, that since she's a surgeon, that I thought, okay, she had an understanding of what was going on before we did.
Yeah, she did. I mean, and that was just, she's very interested in medical things. She's very interested in viruses. She's a well-prepared person, and she prepared us, and she basically said no more public transportation. So I heeded her call. What was kind of interesting was I was forced to travel via air flights in February, and less than 2 weeks ago, I was forced to take a couple of flights up north to speak at, of all things, what's the future of transportation summit. It was the Redefining Mobility Summit held up in Contra Costa County, where we discussed, the future of public transportation. And I was the keynote speaker. It was my very first keynote. Very proud moment, but I got to be honest with you, I didn't want to do it. And I even told them, hey, I really hope we postpone this. All of my flights have been canceled. All of my other conferences have been canceled. Are you sure you're going to go through with this? They went through it, and I said, all right, I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about the future of public transportation, and I'm going to talk about the coronavirus. So I had an entire slide just on that. And so, you reaching out and saying, hey, do you want to have a discussion about the future of public transit? I'm prepared to tell you I can talk about it, but Lord only knows how the whole thing's going to shake out.
So one of the things that was making me think about reaching out to you for this was listening to an episode that Freakonomics just did, saying that one of the changes that might happen is that since people now can work from home, that once this is over, they might want to keep working from home because they no longer have to deal with a commute. So what do you think is going to be, how is this throwing a wrench into the idea of public transit?
Well, there's so many different factors. The work from home movement was already starting. There are a lot of jobs where people are working from home. We have attorneys at my law firm, Nixon Peabody, that work in states where we don't have offices. They literally just work from home. So there are a lot of jobs out there that are already set up to work from home. Now that these other industries that had never even flirted with working from home, like teaching, even my wife's doing some telemedicine, there's a lot of different industries now that we're going to be the dinosaurs to ever move on to the work from home movement. This is forcing us to redo our work. This is going to change a lot of things, and that, a lot of companies are going to be looking at their real estate costs. Wait a minute, if we can do almost as good of a job with everybody working from home, why are we paying for these very expensive leases? I could tell you, this isn't a secret. This is all law firms in the country. One of their biggest expenses are their big leases that they have in these big downtown areas. And is this going to make law firms rethink having those offices? Probably. There are already a whole bunch of virtual law firms. And it's interesting. Commute times have been getting incrementally worse over the past decade, which obviously had an influence upon me, switching to, public transportation all the time. Maybe, with a lot of more people working from home, commute times won't be as bad, and people will start to use, if they have a car, maybe they'll start to use their cars more, and that will also have a negative impact on public transportation. I wrote in a couple of my Forbes.com articles that the trend in public transportation was that the numbers had been moving down, and there's a lot of different factors for that. Uber and Lyft was a factor for that. People working from home was a factor. Cheap gas has always been a factor. And now that we have this movement towards working from home and people not being scared to ride public transportation, I think that's going to affect transit numbers as well.
Yeah, I could see how, always one of the biggest items on the ledger for many businesses is the brick and mortar. And so more and more, you just have been seeing more industries and more businesses try to alleviate some of that brick and mortar cost. You already see it in retail, where, a lot of retail shops were going under before this. I can only imagine how that trend is going to kind of continue to explode.
I agree 100%, Konstantin.
And I also just wanted to back up. I think you hit on a very important point, which is the secret to a great marriage is always listen to your wife.
Amen, man. Amen. You no truer words have ever been spoken.
So also, I should ask, since you like zombie flicks, Have you ever seen one where they're rating for toilet paper, or was this a surprise to you?
I saw something that I saw a quote, and I don't know if it's necessarily attributed to him. And it was kind of, I don't know how to react to it. And maybe it was because he wasn't yet taking this epidemic seriously enough. So I'd love to have him do a retake. I thought I saw a quote from Warren Buffett this week that said, poor people are out there buying toilet paper and rich people are out there buying stocks. And it was kind of like a weird statement. I'm not saying that it was necessarily attributed to him, but I saw like a flash across something. So maybe he had said that. And it was just kind of like, well, yeah, man. I mean, people need toilet paper. But here's the thing. This is not a joke. What I've seen an explosion of, because I went on to Groupon to find one myself, is ordering of bidets. There's a lot of people that are ordering bidets. So not only our work life's going to change, our commuting life's going to change, but I think in the American home, where the bidet is not particularly popular as it is in Eastern culture, you're going to see an explosion of those as well. So that is a little bit of a surprise.
I mean, who needs all that toilet paper? You can just get a little
That is, when I tell you this thing is going to change everything, like literally everything.
Well, okay, this is something that I was thinking with transit, is that it seemed that we were getting closer to more public transit or people being together, maybe this push to get out of the car. But now, if everyone's looking at each other like they've got a virus, isn't this going to take public transit in the opposite direction?
Yeah,
where people are going to want to be either at home or in their own cars?
No, I agree with you. And what I noted at the Redefining Mobility Summit was that transit ridership was already trending down. Like I said, in a couple of Forbes.com articles that I wrote, I'm kind of hyper-focused on that. And so what I said at the conference was, will this be the nuclear bomb that explodes public transportation? Now, obviously, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Once we, God willing, all go back to normal and go back to our lives, not everyone's going to be able to afford a car or even have a garage to park their car. I mean, there's still going to be a use for public transit. But what I've been thinking about over the past couple of weeks, and I haven't conducted the research yet, Gwen, but I'm hoping that these discussions that we're having can be an ongoing little series. In 1918, that's when the flu pandemic was, right? And in 1918, there were a lot of public transit systems. I mean, New York had one, LA had one, there were a lot of them. But shortly after the 1918 flu pandemic, what happened in the 1920s and the late 19-teens? The explosion of the automobile. Now, in my history of transportation and studying of the automobile and the expansion of it, did I ever see anything that said, and the 1918 flu pandemic changed a lot of attitudes towards public transportation? No, I haven't seen that, but maybe if I do a little research, I might find that. Because I'll tell you right now, at the Redefining Mobility Summit that I was at 2 weeks ago, it's very focused on the future of transportation. It's very focused on driverless cars, because the Contra Costa County Transportation Authority, which was the host of the summit, has 2 of like the 3 licenses in the state of California to test driverless cars. I said at the summit, I think this may be really good for driverless cars. Whether that be like, driverless shuttles, whether that be driverless personal vehicles, I think this may be the kick in the butt that driverless cars needed. Because if about 4 or 5 years ago, everybody thought driverless cars were going to be out on the roads like overnight. And I was the first person kind of ringing the bell going, no. We need to redo our infrastructure. We need to redo our laws. We need to have uniform laws. We need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I think it's quite possible that this entire epidemic and everything that's going around may usher in the driverless cars to be here and be a part of our normal lives a lot quicker than was earlier possible.
Now, one thing I wonder, I'd love to get your take on this, Rudy. As we, we're also like, especially here in California, especially in the cities, we have this housing crisis, right? And there's a lot of political context around that's making it difficult to pass laws, but they are coming, and we know that density is coming. There's no way around it. We have like a $3.5 million housing shortfall. Now, granted, after this coronavirus, it might be a little less. Sorry, morbid thoughts. But the only way to build that density is going to be able to ease parking restrictions, parking regulations around the density. And so, like, there will be more homes than there will be parking spaces. Do you think, once it cools off, once the thing kind of gets, kind of like Ebola, like it was like a big deal for a second then. I mean, obviously this hits closer to home. It was so mismanaged so poorly that now it's this huge pandemic, much worse than it probably could have been if we had just prepared a little better at the outset. But at some point, we'll catch up. It'll blow over. A year from now, the news cycle will switch, and it will be inauguration, hopefully, of a new president. Again.
Nice to sneak that in.
Well, I am unapologetically biased. But do you think that need for more urban density could still make the idea, and once the scare and the fear kind of dies down, do you think that there's still be an opportunity for increased transit, or maybe that's the solution is much more frequent and regular transit, so it's not as crowded per se? But do you think that there still might be an opportunity even with the oncoming of urban density?
I wish I could give you a definitive yes. I had thought that the proverbial genie was let out of the bottle with a movement more towards urban density, transit-oriented development, et cetera, et cetera. But then I started studying transit-oriented development, and then I started studying that, prior to the coronavirus, transit-oriented development actually had something was going on. It was kind of counterintuitive. When you had a whole bunch of transit-oriented development, it actually drove out. That actually contributed to transit ridership dropping because the real estate value around that transit got so expensive, not in the particular housing that was on top of the transit, but even just in the entire area, that the traditional users of the transit of that station could no longer afford to live there. So this is like this counter, and I wrote an article on that too that was specifically saying, why are LA's transit numbers dropping? And then I pointed to it, and it had to deal with the affordability crisis. So it's like, I started to kind of change my tune a little bit about transit-oriented development. And I just realized, no, the movement needs to be towards more affordable housing, whether or not to be next to transit or not. It's very important to have affordable housing. With the coronavirus, I do hope that this eventually blows over. I think that, we may be doing waves of these quarantines. I don't think this is just one quarantine for the next couple of weeks and then life goes back to normal. I wish that was what was going to happen. I see waves of this happening over the next 18 months. And once we live under this for 18 months, this could have some long-term psychological impacts on us, and it may change the way we feel towards certain laws, towards certain development. I just really don't know right now. I just don't know.
Do you think this will impact people wanting to invest in public transit after this? Like, I'm also wondering of an economic repercussion of further dividing the have and the have-nots.
Well, interestingly enough, up in Contra Costa County, I had spoken 1 week after a new sales tax measure for an explosion of more transit and more non-automobile transportation had just gotten voted down. And one of the reasons why that got voted down, I think, is because of the SALT cap, which is the state and local tax cap of $10,000. Californians can't be taxed anymore. That's why you hear a lot of Californians are moving out of California. It's because it's not affordable and the taxes are just going crazy. So there's already a movement against more taxes, and the primary way to fund public transit in California is via the sales tax, which is people within a county agree to increase their sales taxes, and that usually goes towards public transit. So there was already a movement against more taxes. Our economy is going to be in shatters and tatters for Lord only knows how long. So when you go to the voters and say, hey, raise taxes, I think you're going to be hearing a lot of hell no's for a while. So I do think that's going to affect the future of building out transit lines. Now, here in LA County, we've already instituted some long-term sales taxes to build out transit. So we're probably good for all the lines that we have to be built over the next 20 to 30 years. But for new transit in the state of California, I don't think this bodes very well for it.
So we're not getting the high-speed rail from LA to the Bay?
I'm actually not allowed to talk about the high-speed rail. I've actually been admonished to, because I've talked about it in the past, and just because of some other work that we do for certain entities, I'm not allowed to talk about it. And I have my own thoughts on that you and I can talk about over a glass of whiskey, Konstantin.
Will do.
Well, I think both of your works kind of overlap. So, Konstantin, how is this impacting affordable housing?
This is the type of situation that really highlights the problem in housing, in that we have so many people, you're talking about people have to be quarantined at home. But when you have, like, just here in the city, 40,000 plus homeless people, and so many more, tens and hundreds of thousands that are housing unstable and housing insecure, it really brings to light how we really need to get serious about fixing this problem. We need to put the politics aside and everyone come to the table and try to come with a solution where everybody wins. And I think that's possible. But people have to get serious on all sides. I think it can't just be about what we classify as strictly affordable,
right?
Because there's a whole missing middle. There's, nurses, mechanics, teachers. At this point, doctors and lawyers are experiencing housing insecurity. And so we have to be able to bring market rate housing down. And the only way you do that is by having enough for reducing the scarcity, by building more. And so, there's ways to do it where you're able to protect communities that are sensitive from gentrification by, extending the timeline, giving them resources to really come with a thoughtful plan to also empower those typically disadvantaged or underrepresented communities to make sure that they aren't going to get pushed out. And I think this can be a time where everyone wins. This is a time for those communities that have, experienced the racial segregation of our housing laws, historic housing laws over the last, century. It's an opportunity for us to turn the tide on that and really make some gains. So it's about everybody coming to the table and making sure that they're getting a seat and being able to voice their opinions and coming with policy that's responsible, but also engages the private sector. There's never going to be enough money to be able to build all the affordable housing that we need without engaging the private sector, incentivizing them to build some too. Also giving opportunities for some of these communities that are experiencing this gentrification, that are experiencing displacement, to also be protected and be at the table as well. And so all those things can be accomplished. There's some, great opportunities to really do something positive here. And so, we're still in that fight, making sure that we are continuing to push because the issue is so important. And even in this time, it's even exacerbated. But at the same time, we have to be human beings and understand that there's the house is on fire, so let's put the fire out first.
Right. But
also think about how we can, right now it's about how do we keep people in their homes. There's these expensive rents, people are getting laid off. You have housing insecurity, and now we have this financial potential collapse. Or not collapse, but it's going to be a tough road back for the country and for jobs and for just regular folks. We have to also be thinking about, what are some of the emergency measures we can to make sure we're keeping people in homes. When you hear the governor talking about in different cities, we have it here in LA talking about freezing evictions, freezing mortgages, trying to get checks out to people that are experiencing job displacement. So those folks are the most vulnerable. We got to keep them in home, in houses. Yeah. Otherwise, it could get, this whole epidemic can get worse.
The cover of the LA Times today, I noticed, was about homelessness and the virus. Well, Rudy, what do you think you think that this is going to be just one round of quarantining? Quarantining, is that a verb? Can we make it a verb?
Yeah, sometimes just gotta make one up.
So much like what Konstantin said is, the secret to the happy marriage, just agree with your wife.
Clearly.
Well, what are you doing anything, what is something that you're doing different? Is there anything fun or something that you're learning from this quarantine time? Are there any binges going on, or are you just doing all your work at home?
What am I learning? There are so many things that I'm learning. I'm learning that I need to have. I've known patience has always been one of my problems. That's why I have, tried to work on my patience. I started reading a lot of Stoic philosophy, as I told you, Gwen.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying
happy
to,
about that.
Use that more in my life and really giving up of control. I'm working a lot. So I do, as you know, Gwen, I mean, not all your listeners know, but I do government finance. But it's not just government finance, it's government and nonprofit finance. And a lot of people are like, hey, why are these big banks getting these bailouts? It's terrible. There should be no money to the banks. And what I've been spending a lot of my time on text messages and talking to people is banks are incredibly important right now because they're getting the money from the federal government. They're giving out a lot of loans. I am working on a lot of loans to hospital systems, to clinics, to state and local governments, because right now all of those need to continue to operate. So one thing that, I know this, but what I want other people to learn is please don't be anti-bank right now. The banks, we are working nonstop to keep the lights on, to keep the sewer systems running, to keep the hospitals running, to give access to capital, the capital that is needed to buy the equipment to keep our healthcare workers like my wife safe. It's a huge part of it. So that's one thing I'm trying to impart on people to think about. But personally, is there anything different that my life is kind of upside down, but just like everybody else's. I'm just trying to take it day by day, and I've finally built my home gym. It's very hard to find weights these days. I think everybody, not only did everybody do a rush on bidets, everybody did a rush on buying some workout weights.
I think this is something that's going to happen. I've noticed a lot of people doing workouts online, and those apps I think are going to get bigger, or people doing video type workouts.
Amen. We bought a Peloton a week ago. It's not going to be delivered for 2 weeks, but we were like, yeah, we'll take the zero interest for 5-year plan and get a Peloton. Hopefully it gets delivered, but I think Peloton's going to be huge. I feel really, I have some friends that just started cycling studios over the last year, and hopefully they'll just convert those to online content, or maybe they'll just become a part of the Peloton system. I know a lot of people in the home, that own home gyms and own those kind of businesses. I am worried about them. So hopefully people don't cancel those memberships, but I agree with you, Gwen. Working out at home is going to explode.
Yeah, I'm just kind of interested in what the cultural shift will be, because there will be one. There's always something that comes out of when we have to kind of re-navigate our lives. And I don't know, maybe it could just be the appreciation for the contact, for being around people. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm wondering, because there will be a line where we're going to say, before this, we used to be such and such a way. And I'm just wondering what that is.
Yeah, it's going to be BCV and ACV, before coronavirus and after coronavirus. After coronavirus, everyone's going to have a bidet and a Peloton in their house. So, that's definitely going to be a cultural shift. There's going to be a whole bunch of other things as well.
Man, I just wish I kept my my flat bench. Had it for years, carried it around house to house. Man, now I'm regretting it.
Yeah, I just set mine up yesterday. It was, but I have this big Olympic weight bar, but I can't find weights because they're totally sold out throughout the country. So it's kind of silly, but eventually I'll fill it up.
Well, Rudy, we'll take care. You and Kate, you and family, take care.
You guys take care too. This was a really good conversation. I wish we could do it in person, but I'm glad we did it, and let's keep up with it.
We will.
I know this was good.
We'll do. I got inspired. Erin from our episode on A Hot Pizza Ass, she's been doing quarantine TV. Yeah. And so I was kind of inspired by that. And I thought, hey, let's just do an impromptu one talking about the coronavirus. Why not?
I love it. You know who you should reach out to?
Who?
You need to reach out to Dahlia. We need to get her on the phone.
Oh.
We need to talk about it. You got to do it, Gwen.
Okay,
Gotta
that
do
sounds
it.
good. All right. Well, take care.
You
All
guys
right,
take care.
Rudy. Take care,
Take
my
care,
man.
Konstantin.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. Konstantin,
Wow,
did
that
you
was-
enjoy that conversation?
That was a great conversation.
That was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone, you have any
Transit in the time of coronavirus.
transit, public housing? No, wait, it's not public housing. Transit, affordable housing. Oh my God. Okay, transit, affordable housing. Lots to think about.
And the best part is Zadie was knocked out through the whole time. Not even a peep.
Here we go. So if you have any questions, you can email me at goodisinthedetailspod@gmail.com. And please leave a rating or review if you're enjoying the content.
5 stars.
5 stars. Okay, and so remember, wash your hands, stay inside, don't cough on people.
Stay your ass at home.
Bye.